In this program, we're going to investigate how to use if statements and then also switch statements. So again, this program would be the if_switch.cpp on your Canvas page. And let's take a look at the first part. So we're using IOStream and then also string. So notice that there's those two include files there. To use a string, we have to do std : string to indicate that that's a string object from the string library file that we included, and then just give it any valid identifier. So in this case, user_name is fine. We're going to use Boolean variables, so remember those can either be true, 1, or 0 false. And then we're using an integer that's pick_number. So this program's going to print out, are you a faculty or a student? It's going to then prompt the user to enter a string, which is going to get stored in user_name. And then it'll come down here to this if test and determine if the username was equal to student. Notice when you're testing for equivalency in C++, you have to use a double equals. C++ will interpret a single equals as an assignment statement. So if you have a single equals here, it will take the value that you have on the right hand side of the equal sign and then store it in the variable that you have on the left hand side, which will not, most of the time will absolutely not give you the correct test result that you would want. So let's try this program. Also notice that C++ is case sensitive, so if I type in student in lowercase, it's going to fail this if test. And then just a quick note on formatting, there's no inline character or \n, so notice that this line of text prints out, and then for cn, I'm inputting the value right on that same line. So it fails this test here and doesn't print out welcome student. It then comes down here to this if test and it fails this if test. So then it goes to the else part of the if test and then it prints out, are you are an unauthorized user. So let's run it again and see if we can get this first part to work. So now I'm going to type in student with capital S. Then it prints out welcome student and an inline character. So let's take a look at how we're using the if statement here and all the syntax that we have. So it's if, open parentheses, and then some kind of a conditional statement. So in this case we're testing for equivalency, but you could also do a greater than using just a greater than sign. So greater than, less than, greater than, equals. All of those kinds of tests would work pretty much as you would expect them to. Again, the one that's a little bit weird is the test for equivalency, where you have to do the double up on the equal sign. This is one option for an if statement where you have a second statement, in this case the cout statement, that just follows your if statement. So if the conditional here is true, so if username is exactly equivalent to student with a capital S, then it will evaluate this second part. And then it just keeps going. So be careful when you're using those kinds of if statements because they don't restrict the code, they don't restrict the further down part of the code from executing. So notice it printed out welcome student, and then it went immediately then to this next if test. If username is faculty, it failed that, and so then it went down to the else. Let's see if we can get the true part of faculty working. So let's run it again. I'm going to do faculty with a capital F. This is our second type of if statement. So we have if and then a conditional, but instead of having a statement out at the end of the if, we do an open brace, and sometimes you'll see that open brace on the same line as the if. Sometimes you'll see it like I did it here where it's on the next line. Either way works. So the open brace starts the body of the statements that are going to be executed if the if statement is true, and then the close brace closes that body of statements. So in this case it did welcome instructor. You can also do an else. You can also do an else if followed by another else if you want, but the else will execute when the comparison fails. So if username is equivalent to faculty, then the first part goes. If the username is not equivalent to faculty, then the else part goes. So under the else part, it's the same idea. You do an open parentheses, and then notice that in this case we've got a lot of stuff in that block. So there's the close, there's the open parentheses on line 28, there's the close parentheses for the else on line 43. So let's take a look and see what all's going on with this instructor part, and then we'll come back and grab the else. So with instructor, it hit the close brace. It didn't execute any of this else part, so it skipped down to line 44, and then now it's in this pick a number between 0 and 1. So we'll do that part of the program in just a sec. Let's see if we can get this else part to work. So we failed this test because we typed in student. So now we're in the else part. It says you are an unauthorized user, and printed out the username, which was student, which is what we typed in. Are you a faculty 0 or a student 1? And then it's doing choice. Remember, choice was our Boolean variable, so choice can only be a 0 or 1 or a true or a false. So here's our third type of doing an if test. Instead of doing a comparison like we did up here, we can just go ahead and use a Boolean. So Boolean is either true, in which case this first part executes, or the Boolean is false, in which case the second part executes. So let's make it be true. Let's enter a 1. We're right here on the CN statement. After we enter that 1, we do if, and now it's the Boolean variable 1, which is true. So since it's true, it says username is then set to student, and then it says you've selected, and then there's the username. Notice that then it falls out of the if else because we have a close brace here, and it's ready to go into the pick number. So try running this first part several different times and try seeing where you are. Try typing in some different things, uppercase, lowercase, and see how it's working, and then let me know if you have any questions on this 3 different ways that we can do the if structure. In the second part, it says pick a number between 0 and 10, and then it's reading in pick number. So let's go back up and see what pick number is. Pick number is an integer value. And then we have a switch statement. So we're trying to pick a number, and then we're going to switch based on the number. So the way a switch works is you have the keyword switch, and then in open parentheses you have that variable that you're basing your decision on. And the variable can be an integer or an integer, any of the integer types. Or it can be a char, a char, a single letter, because a single letter corresponds to an integer ASCII value. It could also be a Boolean, the true or false, although in that case it's not clear why you would be using switch instead of just a regular if-else structure. But we're using integer in this case. You can't use if you try to switch on a float or a double or a string or any other different type of variable other than an int or a char or a Boolean, then it won't work. There's also, you can also set up enumerated variables, but that's out of the scope of what we're going to talk about in this class. So in this course, it would be integers and characters and Boolean. Although, again, I'm not sure why you would use a Boolean. It might be easier just to set up an if. So under your switch, we want to pick a number. So what if we pick a number of 0? Then it's going to go to case 0 and should print out the way too low, and then the program ends. So let's run that again. Oops. So here we are back at pick a number between 0 and 10. Let's look down here and see, well, what if it's not any of these cases? So if it's not any of the cases that we've done, and it doesn't matter whether it's below 0 or greater than 10, or if we, even if, say, we missed a number in here, if it was one of those missing numbers, if we type in a number that's outside of one of these, it's going to go down and run the default case. So if I try typing in 56, it runs this default case, which in this one's set up to say you didn't follow instructions. Now the switch statement does one thing that's kind of odd. Sometimes you'll want it to do this, but most of the time you won't want it to do this. The thing that it'll do is when you run a case, it'll continue running all the cases underneath it until it hits a break statement. So let me take out this break statement here. Actually, let me just comment it out. And let's run it again and just get through this first part. So if we type in a 0 now for a case, then it will print out the way too low, and it's not breaking, so it goes then to the case that's immediately under it, even though it's a 1, and it prints that one out too until it hits that break. So just be aware that most of the time with switch statements, you'll do your case, you'll have your case number. Again, it's going to be, for everything that we're going to be doing, it's probably either going to be an integer value or a single character. That colon, and then the statements, and then make sure that you end it with a break unless you want it to go through and do all the other cases afterwards. Make sure that you have a default set up in there to handle any cases that are outside of the cases that you've strictly built there. And that's it, and the program ends. Thanks for watching.